The kitchen smells like toast and cheap grape jelly, and the light comes in low and gold across the counter the way it only does in early autumn. Lucy is 7 and has opinions about which spoon is hers. Cole is 4 and has milk on his chin. There is a drawer under the coffee maker, the one that always sticks. And inside it, folded once, is a warranty deed with my name spelled correctly and a county recorder's stamp that means the house belongs to the person who actually lives in it. Me. It took a courtroom to put that piece of paper in that drawer. On this morning, it is just a drawer, and my children are arguing about spoons. There is a version of this story where a stranger's key already fit that door, where the mail came addressed to someone I had never met, where my daughter learned to call another woman ceiling her ceiling, and I learned it from 7,000 miles away, if I learned it at all. I did not get that version. I got this one, the toast and the jelly, and the sticking drawer, but only because I refused to sign for the other one. So let me say the stakes plainly, the way I would brief them, because I have learned that plain is the only honest way to say a thing this large. A house, 2 children, $217,000, and a signature I never wrote, sitting on a legal document, notarized and recorded, telling the world I had agreed to lose all 3. I keep one image on my phone that I do not show people. It is a freeze frame from a video. A woman leans toward a webcam in a room I do not recognize, and she is saying my name. She has my license number in her hand and someone else's face, which is to say her own, and she is looking into a camera and telling it she is me. The camera believed her. For 11 minutes, so did the law. A notary signed off, a deed recorded, a wire moved, a condo got bought. All because a woman I had never met leaned toward a lens and said, calmly, that she was Major Calloway, and no machine in the chain was built to argue. People ask me how the courtroom went. They ask what the judge did when she held the deed up to the light. They ask what I said when my husband told the whole room, without flinching, that the money was gone. I will tell all of it. But I have learned that the ending only means something if you have carried the weight the whole way, so I am not going to hand it to you out of order. But let me back up a little. The flight home from Kuwait is long enough that you have time to plan a homecoming down to the minute. And I had. 9 months at Camp Arifjan, a Corps of Engineers deployment that was equal parts concrete and paperwork, and I had counted the days the way you count them when counting is the only control you have. I had a plan for the airport. I had a plan for the first hug. I had told my sister to keep it a secret from the kids so I could be the surprise on the doorstep, the mother who walks back in like she never left. The Army teaches you a particular kind of attention. You learn to notice what does not add up because on a job site or a convoy route, the thing that does not add up is the thing that gets people hurt. For the last month of the deployment, my video calls home had been thinning out. Wade would answer and the connection would be bad, or he would answer from the car, or he would not answer and text back later that the kids were already asleep. I told myself it was the tempo. I told myself that a marriage stretched across an ocean is allowed to go quiet sometimes, that a man raising 2 small children is allowed to be tired and short and hard to reach. I remember one call in particular. I had asked to see the living room, just to see the couch and the rug and the ordinary evidence of home, and Wade had tilted the phone up toward the ceiling and said the light was bad. I had laughed and let it go. You let a great many things go when you are 7,000 miles away, and every argument costs you the little bandwidth you have. I told myself that noticing was a habit that did not need to run at home. I was wrong about that, but I did not know it yet, and the plane kept flying west into a longer and longer afternoon. There was one more call, 10 days before I flew, that I keep coming back to. Lucy had answered the phone herself, which was unusual, and she had held it too close to her face the way children do, so I got mostly forehead and one enormous eye. "Mama, are you coming to the new place?" she had asked. "The new place. Daddy says there's going to be a new place with stairs." And then Wade had taken the phone, easy and quick, and said Lucy was talking about a friend's house, that she got things mixed up, that the connection was cutting anyway, and he would call me tomorrow. He did not call the next day. I sat with the phrase "the new place" with stairs for an hour in a plywood office in Kuwait, and then I filed it under a child's imagination because the alternative was a thought I could not afford to have with 4 months of deployment left to run. I want to be honest that the warning was there. My daughter handed it to me through a phone, and I set it down because setting things down was how I survived being that far from them. I landed on a Tuesday. I did not call ahead. I got my bag, I found a rideshare, and I gave the driver an address I had said so many times it did not feel like words anymore, just a shape my mouth made. We drove through streets I knew. I watched the familiar corners come up and fall behind, and I felt the specific happiness of a person about to be where she belongs. The driver turned onto my street, and something was wrong before I could name it. The lawn was wrong. Not overgrown, not dead. Landscaped. Someone had put in a border of pale river stones I had never chosen, and a young tree staked with green ties. And the flag by the door was a seasonal one, orange leaves on cream, the kind of thing I would never in my life have hung. The mailbox was new, black, with a different number style, and on the front door, over the handle, was a lockbox, the small gray kind a realtor uses. "This is it," I said, because the number was right even though nothing else was. "You sure?" the driver said. "Looks empty. You got a lockbox on the door." "It's the right house." I got out. I stood on the walk with my bag on my shoulder, and I made myself go up the 3 porch steps I had swept 100 times. I knocked, I heard footsteps, and the door opened, and a woman about my age with a dish towel over her shoulder looked at me with the polite, patient face of someone who's about to correct a stranger. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for the Callaways," I said. "Wade and the kids. This is their house." "I think you have the wrong address," she said, kind about it, already stepping back to close the door a little. "It's just us here. We closed in the spring, April." "You closed." "We bought it in April." She read something in my face and softened. "Are you okay? Do you want me to look up the number for the realty office?" "The people who sold it to you," I said, keeping my voice as ordinary as I could make it. "Was it a man? Younger children's things in the house?" "A man, yes. It was all handled through the agents, mostly. He'd already moved out by the time we walked through." She hesitated. "There were some kid drawings taped inside a closet the sellers missed. We left them up, actually. Felt wrong to take them down. Are you sure you're all right? You've gone very pale." "Kid drawings taped inside a closet. Lucy tapes her drawings inside her closet. She has done it since she was 4 because she likes to open the door and be surprised by her own art." I stood on that porch and looked past this kind stranger into my own hallway and understood that my daughter's drawings were still hanging in a house that belonged to someone else now. I said no thank you. I said I was sorry to bother her. I remember being unfailingly polite, because politeness was the last piece of ground I had. I stood on a porch that used to be mine and could not make my key go in, and behind that woman I could see a hallway painted a color I had not picked, and I understood that whatever had happened all the way, completely, months ago, while I was pouring foundations in a desert and telling myself the bad connection was the tempo. My sister Bridget lives across town in a 2-bedroom apartment that was never meant to hold 2 extra children, and that is where my kids had been living, because that is what my family care plan said. When I deployed, I had named Bridget as the caregiver of record, not Wade. That sounds strange until you understand that Wade traveled for his architecture firm and Bridget did not, and the plan was built around who could actually be in the house at 7 in the morning. I had assumed the kids would stay in the house, with Bridget coming and going. I had assumed the house would still be there. When Bridget opened her door and saw me, she made a sound I had never heard her make, and then she was crying before she had even finished saying my name, and then Lucy was running at my legs, and Cole was standing in the hallway in mismatched socks, staring, deciding whether I was real. I got down on the floor. I held both of them. I did the part of the homecoming I had planned, and it was everything I had wanted it to be. And underneath it, my mind had gone very quiet and very cold, because I already knew that the good part and the terrible part were going to have to share the same afternoon. Later, when the kids were asleep in the 2nd bedroom, Bridget sat across from me at her small table with her hands wrapped around a mug she was not drinking from. "I have to tell you something, and you're going to be angry at me," she said. "Not because I did it, because I didn't stop it. Tell me." In November, Wade said the house sold. He said you two had decided, before you left, to sell it. He said you'd signed everything remotely, from over there. Some online notary thing, because of the deployment. She swallowed. "He said you wanted the money set aside for after. He was so calm about it, Sloan. He had documents. He said you'd agreed." "I didn't agree to anything." "I know that now." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know how to reach you to ask. The calls were bad. I told myself if it were a lie, you'd have said something. I kept telling myself that." "Where's Wade living?" "An apartment on the north side. At least that's the address he gave for the kids." She got up, went to a drawer, and came back with a rubber-banded stack of envelopes. "This is your mail. It kept coming to the old house, and the new people forwarded a batch to me before they figured out I wasn't you. I didn't open any of it. I didn't know if I was allowed." I took the stack. There were bank notices, a property tax thing, and a windowed envelope from a title company. I did not open them at the table. I set them down, squared the edges, and put my hand flat on top of them, and I felt the two voices in me the way you feel two currents in a river. One voice wanted to drive to the north side and put my fist through a door. The other voice, the one the Army had spent 16 years training into me, said something quieter and much more useful. Stay calm, do not detonate, observe, collect, write it down. Can I stay here tonight? I asked. With them? You never had to ask that, Bridget said. I called Wade the next morning and asked to meet, and I kept my voice so level that he agreed to a diner near his office without suspecting anything, which told me he thought I did not know yet, which told me a great deal about the kind of man I had married. He was already in the booth when I got there, and he stood up like this was a date, and he said my name warmly, and he looked, if anything, relieved to see me. Wade is a handsome man who has never once in his life been made to sit in the consequences of a thing, and it shows in how easily he smiles. You look good, he said. Tired, but good. How was the flight? Long. I sat. The house is gone, Wade. He did not flinch. He folded his hands on the table like a man about to deliver hard but reasonable news. I was going to talk to you about that in person. I'm glad you're home so we can. You were gone 9 months, Sloan. Somebody had to make decisions. The house was in my name. The house was ours. We were married when we lived in it. His phone lit up on the table, face down, and buzzed twice, and he glanced at it, and something moved across his face that was almost a smile, and he turned it further away. The market was good. It made sense to sell and reset. I put the money somewhere safe. We can figure out the split like adults. You sold my house while I was deployed, and you're telling me I signed for it. You did sign for it. Remotely. There's a whole video notarization thing now. It's completely legal. You agreed on camera. He said it smoothly, without a hitch. The way you say a thing, you have said to yourself in the mirror until it sounds true. I know it's a lot to come home to, but it's done, and it was legal, and we should talk about how to move forward instead of relitigating it. Show me the video, Wade. For the first time, a pause. A small one. He picked up his coffee. I don't have it on me. It's with the title company. You just told me I'm on camera agreeing. Show me. I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated, he said, and his voice found an injured note that I recognized from years of arguments I used to lose. You left. You chose to leave. I held everything together, and now you come back and the first thing you do is accuse me. You want to talk to me about accusing you, I said. Let's talk about the day I got home. I stood on the porch of the house I bought, and a woman I have never met told me she closed on it in April. My daughter's drawings are taped inside a closet that belongs to strangers now. Explain that to me like an adult, and I will listen. I don't have to explain anything. It was legal. You keep saying legal like it's a wall you can stand behind. Because it is. He set the coffee down hard enough to slop it. You want to make me a criminal. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who did drop-off and pick-up and stayed up when Cole had an ear infection. Where were you? Kuwait. You don't get to fly back in and decide you're the victim. Bridget did drop off and pick up, Wade. That's what the family care plan says. That's on paper, too, if we're counting paper. His jaw worked, and he did not answer that, and his phone buzzed again. He looked at it, and this time he did smile, just for a second, before he caught himself, and I understood that whoever was texting him was more present in that booth than I was. I did not raise my voice. I picked up my bag. Get me the closing documents, I said. All of them. That's all I want from you right now. Sloan. The closing documents. I stood. Thank you for the coffee. I drove from the diner to my mother-in-law's house, because I've always believed that if you want to understand a lie, you should visit the people who love the liar. Diane opened the door, and her whole body changed when she saw me, and it did not change toward warmth. Well, she said, you're back? I'd like to talk about the house. She let me in the way you let in a bill collector. Her living room was the same as it had always been, doilies and framed photographs and a bowl of hard candy nobody ate, and she sat me down and did not offer me anything to drink, which for Diane is a declaration of war. I know what you're here to do, she said. You're here to make Wade the villain, and I won't sit for it. That boy has been raising those children by himself while you played soldier in the desert. He sold the house they live in. He made a hard decision for his family. Somebody had to. She rose, went to a side table, and came back with a single sheet of paper in a plastic sleeve, and she held it out to me like evidence. I've already written this. A character letter. For whatever nonsense you're planning to drag him into. I will stand up in any room and say what kind of father he is. I did not take the sleeve. I read the top line from where I sat. To whom it may concern. She had dated it. She had written it before I'd even landed. You called me here to hand me a letter defending him for something you're pretending I'm imagining, I said. I called you nothing. You showed up. She sat back down, satisfied, certain. You chose the army, Sloane. He chose the children a home. He chose to sell the home, I said. There's a difference, Diane, and someday it's going to matter to you which one is true. Don't you dare come into my house and lecture me. I came into your house because I thought you might want to know the truth before you signed your name to a lie. That letter has a date on it. You wrote it before I landed, before you'd heard one word from me. Think about what that means about who told you this was going to happen and when. For just a moment, something flickered behind her certainty, some small crack of arithmetic, and then she shut it down and lifted her chin higher. Wade told me you'd twist everything, she said, and here you are, twisting. That is the sentence I keep. Not that one, the earlier one. I want you to hold on to it, because Diane held on to it, and it cost her more than anyone in this story except the two people who forged my name. You chose the army. He chose the children a home. She said it like scripture. She would spend the next year of her life learning exactly what she had defended. I did not argue with her. I stood. I thanked her for her time, and I left with the shape of the whole thing finally clear in my head. Wade had sold the house. Wade was covered by his mother, and somewhere in the machinery there was a video that supposedly showed me agreeing, a video Wade would not produce, a video that either did not exist or showed something he could not afford for me to see. I did not raise my voice in that living room. I asked for the closing documents, again, on my way out, and Diane said Wade would handle it. That was the day I stopped being surprised and started being thorough. The first place I went that was built to help me was the legal assistance office on post, because I still had that. A deployment does not evaporate the moment your boots hit home soil, and neither do the resources that come with the uniform. I sat across from a judge advocate captain who listened to the whole thing without interrupting, made notes, and then told me something that reorganized my entire understanding of what had happened. You keep saying they forged your signature, he said. I want you to think about it differently, because the difference is your whole case. A notary does not prove that you signed something. A notary can't. A notary proves that someone appeared before them and said, under oath, that they were you. That's all it ever proves. So the question isn't whether your signature is real. The question is who appeared. It's a remote thing, online. There wouldn't have been anyone in a room. Remote online notarization. It's legal in this state and a lot of others. You get on a video call with a commissioned notary. You show your ID to the camera. They scan it. They ask you some questions. You sign electronically, and they stamp it. The whole session gets recorded, and the recording gets kept, by law, for years. Audit trail, ID scan, the video, timestamps, the network address the signer connected from. He leaned back. Which means somewhere on a server, there is a recording of whoever sat in that chair in November and claimed to be you. If it wasn't you, that recording is the most dangerous thing in the world for them, and they may not even realize it exists. I asked him what I would need. He told me to start with the recorded deed itself, which is a public document, and then to build the thing that no recording could argue with, where I actually was. The county recorder's office is a beige room with a counter and a clerk who has seen every kind of human misery cross her desk and has developed a gentle, unbothered efficiency about it. I asked for the deed on my property. She pulled it up, printed it, and slid it across, and I read it, standing at the counter because I could not wait to sit down. It was a warranty deed. It named me, Sloane Calloway, as the grantor, the person selling. It named a buyer. It listed a price of $217,000. And at the bottom, in the acknowledgement block, it said that the signature had been notarized by remote online notarization, that the notary was a commissioned officer named Gordon Pruitt, and that the act had taken place on the 14th of November. I stood there and read that date 3 times. On the 14th of November, I was 7,000 miles away, badged onto a base in Kuwait, in a country I could not have left without a paper trail longer than my arm. I had eaten in the dining facility that morning. I had run a site inspection that afternoon. My common access card had opened doors all day, and every one of those swipes was logged, time-stamped, and sitting in a system that does not care about anyone's feelings. I could account for every hour of the 14th of November. I could prove it in a way that no video of a woman in a chair could ever overcome. Do you need a certified copy? The clerk asked. 2, I said. The paper said I sold my house. Standing at that counter with the date drying under my thumb, I made a private promise that the paper was going to regret it. Nadine Kessler's office is on the 4th floor of a building downtown, and it has the kind of quiet that costs money. She is 49, precise, and she reads documents the way I read blueprints, which is to say she looks for the load path, the place where the whole structure is actually carrying its weight. I put my file on her desk, the certified deed, my deployment orders, my badge logs printed and stamped, Bridget's rubber-banded stack of mail, the character letter I had photographed in Diane's living room before I left. Kessler read for a long time without speaking. Then she set the deed on top and put one finger on the acknowledgement block. "This is a good case," she said. "I want to tell you why, because you need to understand the strategy before we start. And the strategy is the opposite of what you probably want to do. Which is, you probably want to walk into a room and call your husband a liar and your mother-in-law a fool. We are not going to do that. We are going to do something much worse to them." She almost smiled. "We are going to be boring. We are going to file a quiet title action, which is a civil suit that asks a court to declare who actually owns a piece of property. We are going to argue that this deed is void, not voidable void, because you never appeared, never signed, never granted anything, and a deed signed by someone impersonating the owner conveys nothing. We are going to ask the court to cancel it and restore title to you. And we are going to ask for a constructive trust over whatever they bought with the proceeds, which means if that money turned into a condo, the court can reach the condo." "And Wade? Chelsea?" She looked at me. "Who is Chelsea?" "The woman he's with. His mother won't say her name, but the kids have mentioned a Chelsea. I think she's why the calls went bad." Kessler wrote it down. "Then here's the second half. We do not need to prove intent by calling anyone a liar in front of a jury. We need the platform's own recording. Remote online notarization sessions are recorded and retained by law. We subpoena the platform. We subpoena the escrow file. We subpoena the notary of record, this Gordon Pruitt. We subpoena the bank records that show where the $217,000 went. And we let their own systems tell the story, because a system has no motive to lie for anyone." She squared the papers. "We do not need to call anyone a liar. We need the platform's own recording." "There's something you should understand about how this looks from the other side," Kessler went on. "Right now, your husband thinks he's won. The house sold, the money moved, the deed recorded, the buyers moved in. In his mind, it's finished. It's history. It's a thing you have to accept. Men who think they've won get careless. They say things on the record they shouldn't. They keep texts they should have deleted. Our entire job is to be patient enough to let that carelessness surface on its own." She looked at me over the deed. "Can you be patient? Because the hardest part of this is not going to be the law. The hardest part is going to be sitting across a table from him at a child exchange and not saying a single thing that tips him off that we're building this." "I spent 9 months pouring concrete in 120 degrees, I said. "I can be patient." "Good. Then let me be blunt about the other thing. If we're right, and I think we are, this is not a divorce dispute. This is identity fraud and a false notarization, and those are crimes. When we get to the end of this, real people are going to face real consequences, and some of them are people your children love. I need to know you understand that going in, because I've watched clients discover halfway through that winning costs more than they wanted to pay." I thought about Lucy's drawings taped inside a stranger's closet. "I understand it. Keep going." "How long?" "Months. Discovery is slow. But you have the one thing most people in your chair never have. You can prove, to the minute, that you were somewhere else. Everything after that is just pulling thread." I went home to Bridget's apartment that night, and I built my file the way I would build anything I needed to hold weight. I laid the deployment orders next to the badge logs, and I highlighted the 14th of November on both. I wrote out a memo requesting a statement from my commander confirming I had been in theater that entire week, and I drafted it clean because I knew he would sign a clean one faster than a messy one. I pulled my bank statements and I circled the account the house proceeds should have landed in, and did not. I sorted Bridget's mail into what mattered and what did not. Bridget sat with me one of those nights, folding the kids' laundry into piles while I worked. "You're not going to yell at any point in this, are you?" she said. "You're going to build a binder and beat him with a binder. That's the plan. He's going to hate that more than anything you could scream." She matched 2 socks and set them down. "When we were kids, you used to organize the arguments you lost. Remember? You'd write down what you should have said and staple it and hand it to Mom the next morning." I remember Mom keeping every one of them. She kept every one of them. Bridget looked at me. I should have called somebody. When he told me it was sold, I should have driven to a base and made somebody get a message to you. I keep thinking about that. You kept the mail, I said. The whole case is partly sitting in a stack of envelopes you didn't throw away because something felt wrong. Don't carry the part where you couldn't reach me across an ocean. Carry the part where you saved exactly what I needed. She nodded, and she did not say anything, and she kept folding, and that was its own kind of forgiveness passing between us. And I did the arithmetic out loud once, sitting at the small table after the kids were asleep, because I wanted to hear it. $217,000. A house with 2 bedrooms upstairs and a yard where I had meant to build a swing set. Lucy, 7. Cole, 4. A signature I never wrote. I had spent a career building things that had to hold weight, bridges and revetments and structures that could not be allowed to fail with people standing on them. And I built this the same way. One verified element at a time, nothing assumed, nothing skipped. Discovery is where a case stops being a feeling and starts being a stack. It came in pieces over weeks, and each piece was worse and clearer than the last. The escrow file arrived first, a thick envelope from the title company, and Kessler and I went through it page by page in her office. There was the settlement statement, the disbursement instructions, the buyer's loan documents, and, near the back, the notarial record, Gordon Pruitt's commission number, his electronic seal, and attached to it the identification the signer had presented to the camera. It was a driver's license, my driver's license number, my date of birth, my address, the old one, the house, and the photograph on it was not me. That's not my face, I said. No, Kessler said quietly. It's not. I looked at the woman in the license photo for a long time. She was around 30, dark-haired like me, close enough in the broad strokes that a scanner reading numbers would never object. But it was plainly not me to any human being who had ever seen my face. Someone had taken my real license number and my real details and married them to a different photograph, and the resulting image had been presented to a notary as proof of identity, and it had passed. It was my license number, I said. It was not my face. Remember what the JAG told you, Kessler said. The notary doesn't prove you signed. He proves someone appeared and swore they were you. This is the someone. The money trail came next, subpoenaed from the bank, and it was as clean as the fraud was dirty. The $217,000 had been wired from escrow into an account that had started the year as a joint account with both our names and had, 3 weeks before the closing, been quietly converted to Wade's name alone. From there, a series of transfers. And then, in December, a cashier's check for $43,000 made out toward the down payment on a condominium, and the condominium had been titled not to Wade and not to me, but to a Chelsea Dunmore. There she is, Kessler said, in writing. Read me the timeline again, I said. Out loud. I want to hear the order of it. Kessler pulled the pages together and read it like a flight manifest. The account converts from joint to his name alone in late October. The notarization happens the 14th of November. Escrow disperses $217,000 in late November. In December, $43,000 comes off as a cashier's check toward a condominium down payment. The condominium title's to Chelsea Dunmore before the year is out. She set it down. He didn't panic and improvise this, Sloan. Look at the sequence. He cleared the account of your name 3 weeks before he needed a woman to sit in front of a webcam. This was planned in stages, the way you'd plan a project. That word landed on me strangely, because it was my word. In stages, the way you'd plan a project. I had married an architect. He had drawn this the way he drew buildings. In phases, with a sequence and a schedule, and the load he had designed the whole structure to carry was me being too far away to check. Then came the texts, pulled from Wade's own phone records through the subpoena, and this was the part that took the case from a paperwork error to something with a name. Most of it was logistics, mundane and cowardly, but there was a thread from early November between Wade and a number saved as Chelsea, and Kessler laid it out and read it to me in a flat voice, and I made her read it twice. You, Kessler read, you have her license info memorized? And the reply, yes, stop worrying. And then him again. Just sign as her, the camera won't care. It's a webcam and a guy in another state. Look at the lens and say the name. She set the page down. Just sign as her, the camera won't care. He wrote that. He wrote that. There is a particular cold that comes over you when a thing you have suspected turns into a thing you can hold. I did not cry in that office. I had promised myself I would ration that, and I did. I read the words on the page, my own license number in a stranger's mouth, my own name reduced to a thing you say to a lens, and I felt the case close around them like a hand. The near miss came the week after. Wade's lawyer sent an offer, and it arrived dressed up as generosity. They would give me a lump sum. A real number, enough to put a down payment on a new place, enough that a tired person could tell herself it was a fresh start. In exchange, I would drop the quiet title action, agree that the sale had been a good faith misunderstanding between spouses, and sign a non-disclosure agreement that would make it illegal for me to ever describe what had happened. No admission, no record, no recording ever played anywhere. Kessler slid it across the desk and watched me. She did not advise me. She let me read it. I read all 4 pages. I understood exactly what it was. It was the same move as the deed. It was a document that would let them decide who I was and what had happened, and it would pay me to hold still for it. I set the offer down and squared the edges, the way I do, and I said one sentence. No, this one goes on the record. Kessler nodded once, like I had passed something. Then we go to a hearing. Every document I pulled that season said the same thing in a different language. The deed said it in the acknowledgement block. The bank said it in a wire and a cashier's check. The license said it with a stranger's face over my numbers. The text said it in my husband's own words. Someone pretended to be me. The only thing left was to make a room full of people hear all of it say it at once. The platform answered the subpoena in the spring, and that changed the temperature of the entire case, because until then, everything I had was paper, and paper can be argued about. The recording could not be argued about. It could only be watched. The company's compliance investigator was a man named Warren Tully, and Kessler deposed him first, in a conference room with a court reporter and Wade's lawyer and a laptop connected to a screen on the wall. Tully was 39, careful, the kind of witness who answers exactly the question asked and not one word past it. He explained how the system worked. He explained retention. He confirmed under oath that the session from the 14th of November existed, that it was complete, and that the audit trail attached to it had not been altered. Then Kessler deposed Chelsea, and I watched a story fall apart in real time. Chelsea Dunmore is poised in a way that reads as confidence until it is tested. She came in with a version of events already built, and she delivered it smoothly for the first 20 minutes. She had simply been helping. Wade and I, she said, had been going through the sale together, and she had helped with some of the paperwork as a favor because Wade was overwhelmed, and if anything had gone sideways, it was an innocent mistake made by people trying to do me a kindness while I was away. So, to be clear, Kessler said, your testimony is that Major Calloway asked you to help with the sale. Yes, she wanted it handled. She was busy. She asked you personally, through Wade, but yes. Let me play something, Kessler said, and she nodded at the laptop. She played 10 seconds, just 10. The screen showed a room I did not know and a woman leaning toward a webcam, and the woman looked into the lens and said, in a voice that was not mine, I'm Sloane Calloway, and I'm signing of my own free will. The room was very quiet. Ms. Dunmore, Kessler said, is that your voice? Chelsea did not answer. Is that you on the screen? Chelsea looked at Wade's lawyer, who looked at the table. I'd like to take a break, Chelsea said. Before we break, Kessler said, unhurried, just so the record is clean. A moment ago you testified that Major Calloway asked you to help with the sale. Having heard that clip, do you want to correct any part of your earlier answer? Chelsea's lawyer put a hand on the table. We'll take the break now. That's fine, Kessler said. The record will note the question is pending. And after that, Chelsea answered almost nothing, and every non-answer was its own kind of testimony. There is a specific silence that comes over a person when they realize the story they walked in with is now the thing most likely to convict them. I watched it settle over Chelsea Dunmore across a conference table, and I did not feel satisfied. Exactly. I felt the way you feel when a load test finally confirms what your calculations told you months before. Not glad, just certain. Tully's deposition, when Kessler brought him back to authenticate the full trail, was the piece that turned my stomach and steadied my spine at the same time. He walked through the audit log line by line. The session had connected from a network address that geolocated not to my house, not to a base in Kuwait, but to an apartment building on the north side of town, the same building, it would turn out, where Chelsea Dunmore lived. The device that connected was not any device registered to me, and the identification. Tully got quiet when he reached the identification. The platform runs an automated identity check, he said. It compares the photograph on the presented identification against the live video of the signer, and it scores the match. On this session, the automated system flagged the identification. It scored the photo comparison below the passing threshold and raised a review prompt. "What does that mean in plain terms?" Kessler asked. "It means our own software looked at the license photo and looked at the person on camera and said these might not be the same person." It raised its hand. And then the flag was cleared manually. Someone in the notary's session marked it as reviewed and proceeded. I sat with that for a long moment. Their own tool had raised its hand in November. It had looked at a stranger wearing my numbers and said, "This is wrong," and somebody had reached over and clicked past it, and the session had rolled on. And 11 minutes later, my house was somebody else's. For the first time in the whole ordeal, the paper was not a threat pointed at me. The paper was on my side, and it was about to be on a screen where everyone could see it. The quiet title hearing was on a Thursday in a county courtroom with tall windows and a radiator that ticked. Judge Catherine Boone presided, 58, unhurried, with reading glasses she used like a tool, and a way of listening that made lawyers slow down. Wade was there in a good suit. Diane was in the gallery, in the third row, in a dress she saves for church, with her chin up. And Chelsea Dunmore sat in the second row, behind Wade, close to him, and she had decided, for reasons I will never understand, to look confident. Kessler laid out the case in her boring, devastating way. The deed, the date, my orders, my badge logs, the JAG memo confirming I had been in theater. She was building the load path, element by element, and I could see Judge Boone following it, her pen moving. Then Wade's lawyer put Wade on the stand, and Wade did the thing that men like Wade always do, which is to assume that confidence is the same as safety. He testified that the sale had been a mutual decision. He testified that I had known, that I had wanted the money set aside, that everything had been done properly. And Kessler let him talk, because Kessler understood that a confident man on a witness stand is a resource, not a threat. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "you've testified that the sale was a mutual decision and that your wife knew about it and wanted it. I want to make sure I understand. When did she agree?" "Before she deployed. We talked about it." "You talked about selling the house before she left in August." "In general terms, yes." "And the specific decision to list it, to accept an offer of $217,000 to close in November. When did she agree to those specifics?" "Remotely, over the phone, and she signed." "She signed on the 14th of November." "Yes." "We'll come back to that," Kessler said, and she let it hang, and I saw Wade file the phrase away as a small victory instead of the trap it was. "Let me ask you something simpler in the meantime. Mr. Calloway, where is the money from the sale? The $217,000. And Wade, who had spent months believing that his calm was a fortress, looked at his mother in the gallery, and then he said it. "The money's gone. I bought her a condo." He said it like it was reasonable. He said it like a man explaining a sensible allocation of assets. Behind him, in the second row, Chelsea Dunmore smiled. She could not help it. It was a small, private, satisfied smile, the smile of a woman hearing her name honored in a courtroom, and she let it cross her face in front of the judge and the reporter and me. $217,000. My house. The yard where the swing set was supposed to go. And the man who took it stood there and told the room he had turned it into a condominium for the woman smiling behind him, and he expected the room to nod. I stayed quiet. I had promised Kessler I would, and I had promised myself, and I kept both promises with my hands folded in my lap. Judge Boone did not raise her voice. She reached out and took the exhibit copy of the warranty deed from the clerk, and she held it up, angling it toward the tall windows so the light came through the page, studying the signature line, the way you study a thing you already half suspect. The radiator ticked. Nobody breathed. "Mr. Calloway," she said, lowering the deed just enough to look at him over her glasses. "Confirm for me that this is your wife's signature." And there it was. The whole thing balanced on one question. The question they had built their entire year on. The question they needed him to answer, yes. Kessler had told me that at this exact moment I would be permitted to speak once and that I should keep it short. I had thought about what I would say for months. I stood. "Your Honor," I said, level. Before he answers, I would ask the court to play the notary's own recording of that signature. The room turned. Judge Boone looked at me for a moment, and then at Kessler, who was already rising with the authenticated exhibit, and the judge said, "The court will see it." They dimmed nothing. The screen simply came to life on the courtroom wall, and Warren Tully took the stand to narrate it, because a recording without its keeper is just pixels, and Kessler had built this to be unarguable. The video began. The timestamp in the corner read the 14th of November. The room on the screen was an apartment I did not know, and a woman leaned into frame and settled in front of the webcam. And it was the face from the license, which is to say it was Chelsea Dunmore, younger and darker-haired than the photo she had chosen, but unmistakably her. She held up a driver's license to the lens. Tully, in his flat and careful voice, said, "That is the identification presented. It bears Major Calloway's license number and date of birth. The photograph is not Major Calloway." The recording played on. Gordon Pruitt's voice, the notary, off-screen and tinny, asked the woman to state her name for the record. "I'm Sloane Calloway," the woman on the screen said. I heard my own name in a stranger's mouth in a room full of people, and I did not move. The notary asked her to confirm she was signing of her own free will, and she said she was. And then, in a moment that Tully did not have to point out because everyone in the room caught it at once, a second voice came from somewhere off-frame, low, familiar, a man's voice saying, "Good, now the date." Just that. A coaching voice, quiet, thinking itself out of range of the microphone. It was Wade. Everyone who knew him knew it, and everyone who did not could see Wade's face in the courtroom as he heard it, and his face was enough. Wade's lawyer stood. "Objection, Your Honor. We have no way to verify who that off-frame voice belongs to." "Noted," Judge Boone said, without looking away from the screen. "The court will draw its own conclusions about voices it can hear. Overruled. Continue." Tully continued through the audit trail, while the video held on a paused frame of the woman's face, the network address that geolocated to the Northside apartment building, the unregistered device, and then the flag. "The platform's automated identity check scored this identification below threshold," Tully said. "It flagged the session for review. The flag was cleared manually within the session, and the notarization proceeded." "Their own system," Kessler said for the record, identified this as a possible impersonation, and someone overwrote it. "Yes," Tully said. I looked once at the gallery. Diane Calloway was not holding her chin up anymore. She was staring at the paused frame on the wall, at the stranger wearing her daughter-in-law's name, and her hand had come up to her mouth, and the church dress meant nothing now. She had written a letter. She had called me an absentee mother in her own living room, and she was watching, in a public courtroom, the exact thing she had defended, a stranger using my face to steal my children's home, and I watched her understand it all the way down. I did not feel triumph looking at her. I felt something closer to grief, because whatever else she was Lucy and Cole's grandmother, and she had just learned what she had helped. Judge Boone let the room sit for a moment after the screen went dark. Then she took off her glasses. "I've seen enough to rule," she said, "and I'm going to rule from the bench because I don't want this to sit unresolved one day longer than it has." Before she did, she looked at Wade, who was still standing at the witness rail because no one had told him he could sit, and she asked him one more question, and it was not a legal question so much as a human one. "Mr. Calloway, a few minutes ago, before we played that recording, you were about to confirm for me that the signature on this deed was your wife's. Do you still wish to do that?" The courtroom waited. Wade opened his mouth and closed it and looked at the paused frame on the wall, the stranger with the license, and then at his mother in the gallery with her hand over her mouth, and then finally down at the rail. "No," he said. It was barely audible. "I didn't hear you. No, it isn't her signature." "Thank you," Judge Boone said. "You may sit." She read her findings in a steady voice. She found that Major Sloane Calloway had been on deployment in Kuwait on the 14th of November and could not have appeared before the notary. She found that the person who appeared was not the grantor. She found that the deed executed on that date was void, conveying no title because a deed signed by an impersonator conveys nothing. She ordered the deed canceled and title to the property restored to me, subject to sorting out the innocent buyers, whom she noted had purchased in good faith and would be made whole through other means. She imposed a constructive trust over the condominium purchased with the proceeds, meaning the law would reach through Chelsea Dunmore's name and treat that property as belonging, in equity, to me. And she referred the matter, the forged identification, the false notarization, the impersonation, to the district attorney for criminal review. And she named the names for the record. Kessler had told me that at some point I might be asked if I wanted to make a statement about damages, about pressing for the maximum, and I had thought about that too. When the moment came, I stood. "Your Honor, I want the house back for my children and the money accounted for," I said. "I'm not asking the court for anything beyond making them whole and letting the criminal process do its work. I didn't come here to take everything from anyone. I came here because someone decided my signature was a thing they could invent, and I needed a court to say, on the record, that it isn't." Judge Boone looked at me for a moment. "The record so reflects Major Calloway," she said. "Title is yours." I did not feel like I had won. People expect you to feel like you have one, and I did not. I felt like I had finally set something heavy down, a thing I had been carrying since a porch in the spring, and my arms did not know yet what to do without the weight. The reckoning was the courtroom. The part that changed me was quieter and came weeks later, on a porch, in a conversation I did not expect and did not ask for. I had moved us back into the house by then. The good faith buyers had been made whole through the title insurance and the trust, and had, to their enormous credit, been gracious about the whole ordeal, and the keys had come back to me, and I had put the corrected deed in the sticking drawer under the coffee maker. Lucy had reclaimed her room like it had been waiting for her, which it had. Cole did not fully understand that we had ever left, which was its own mercy. Diane came on a Sunday. She stood on the porch and did not try to come in, and when I opened the door, she looked older than I had ever seen her, the certainty gone out of her like air out of a tire. "I'm not here about Wade," she said. "I want to be clear about that before you decide whether to shut the door. I'm not here to explain him or ask you to go easy on him. I don't have any right to ask you for anything." "Then why are you here?" "Because I wrote that letter." Her voice was steady in the way that costs a person everything. "I wrote a character letter before you even landed. I called you an absentee mother in my own living room, to your face, and I was proud of it. And then I sat in that courtroom, and I watched a stranger hold up a card with your name on it and use your face to take my grandchildren's house. And I heard my son's voice telling her to do it, and I finally understood what I helped. I armed him, Sloan. I handed him a letter and a story, and I told myself I was defending my boy, and what I was actually doing was helping him rob you." She stopped. Her eyes were wet, but she did not let herself fall apart because I think she understood she had not earned my comfort. "I don't want anything. I just needed you to hear me say I know." I let her stand there a moment because there are apologies you should not rush. "I believe you," I said finally. "I do. And I'm not going to pretend the last year didn't happen, or that a Sunday porch fixes it. If you want to be in Lucy and Cole's lives, it happens on terms, and the terms are not negotiable. Honesty, always, even when it's about your son. The children first, ahead of your loyalty to him. And no carrying his version of things into my house, not once. If you can live inside those, there's a place for you here. If you can't, there isn't." "I can live inside those," she said. "I will." "Then we'll start small," I said. "Sunday dinner. You come as their grandmother, nothing else comes with you." "There's one more thing," she said, and she reached into her handbag and took out a folded sheet of paper, worn soft at the creases, and held it out. "This is the letter. The character letter. I never sent it anywhere in the end, but I kept it, and I don't want it in my house. I want you to do with it whatever you need to." I took it. I did not read it again. I did not tear it up in front of her either, because that would have been a performance, and we were past performances. "I'll keep it," I said, "not to hold over you. To remember how fast I almost lost, because the person who raised the father of my children believed him over the evidence. That's worth remembering. For both of us." "For both of us," she said quietly. She nodded, and she did not hug me, because she was wise enough not to reach for it, and she went back down the steps she had climbed. And that was the beginning of a thing we are still slowly building. The boundary with Wade was simpler, because Wade had made it simple. His time with the children became supervised and structured, arranged through people whose job is to keep that kind of thing from turning into a weapon. And Chelsea Dunmore, who was facing her own reckoning with the district attorney over the identification and the impersonation, was gone from the children's lives entirely, by order and by my flat refusal to negotiate it. Wade faced restitution he will be paying for years, and charges that are not mine to resolve and not mine to soften. I did not press for the maximum on the civil side once the house and the money were secured, and some people did not understand that, and I stopped explaining it, because the explanation is only for me anyway. The strongest thing I did all year was refuse to become someone my children would have to survive. I could have let the betrayal make me cruel. There was a version of me, standing on that spring porch with my key that would not go in, who could have spent the next decade sharpening every conversation into a blade and calling it justice. I chose the boring, load-bearing thing instead. I built a case, I won it, I set terms, and I kept my voice down the whole way, not because I was calm inside, but because my children were going to inherit whichever version of me I practiced. I forgave the grandmother. I want to be precise about that, because forgiveness gets talked about like it is one thing, and it is not. I forgave Diane, which means I let her back in on terms, and I do not hold the letter over her every Sunday. I did not unforget what happened. I remember the porch and the lockbox and the stranger with the dish towel and my own name in a stranger's mouth, and I will remember them for the rest of my life. Those are allowed to be two different things. You can decide to stop punishing someone and still refuse to pretend the wound was never there. That is not a contradiction. That is just being an adult who was hurt and chose not to organize the rest of her life around the hurt. A year on, the house has become a house again, which is the highest thing I can say about it. There is a swing set in the back now, the one I meant to build before the deployment, and I built it on a Saturday, with Cole handing me the wrong tools and Lucy supervising from a lawn chair like a foreman. The pale river stones the previous owners put in have grown on me, and I kept them, which felt like a small, private act of not letting the ugly year decide even my landscaping. The corrected deed is still in the drawer that sticks. I do not look at it often. I like knowing it is there. The Army was good to me through all of it, in the quiet institutional way the Army is good, which is to say people did their jobs, and the paper that was supposed to protect me protected me. A promotion board met this year, and I made the list. And there is a command opportunity ahead that I would not have believed possible in the worst weeks of the case, when I was not sure I would keep the house or my composure. I am still building things that have to hold weight. I have simply learned that a life is one of those things, and that you pour its foundation the same way you pour any other, one verified element at a time, nothing assumed, nothing skipped. Diane comes on Sundays. She reads to Cole, and she lets Lucy beat her at cards, and she has never once, not one time, brought her son's version of anything through my door. She is a real grandmother again. On the terms we set on the porch, and watching her with the kids, I sometimes feel the grief of the whole year turn, very slowly, into something I can live beside. If my story has taught you anything, let it be this. Your name is yours. Your signature is a fact about the world, not a thing other people get to invent because you were far away and busy trusting them. When someone tells you that a document has already decided who you are and what you agreed to, you are allowed to say no, and you're allowed to say it quietly, and you're allowed to spend as long as it takes proving it. The truth does not need you to scream. It needs you to keep the receipts, to stay calm, to build your case the way you would build anything that has to carry the weight of the people standing on it. Integrity is the truest answer to betrayal, not because it feels good, but because it is the only answer that leaves you as someone your children can still climb onto. If this story reached something in you, please share it with someone who needs it. Somewhere out there is a person who has been told a document already settled the matter, who has been made to feel like a stranger in their own life, and you're sharing. This might be the thing that tells them they are allowed to fight quietly and completely and win. And if you have lived any part of this, I would be honored to hear it. If you have served, if you have loved someone who served, if you have come home to find the ground moved under you, if you have ever been disbelieved by the very people who were supposed to know you best, tell me your story in the comments. Say your piece. There are more of us than you think, and this is a place where you will be believed. If you want more stories about courage, about justice, and about hope, subscribe and stay with us. There are more of them, and they are all, in the end, about the same thing, that the truth is patient and that ordinary people who refuse to let go of it are stronger than the lies told about them. Thank you for being here, for giving this an hour of your life, and for still believing, after everything, that people can set the heavy things down and walk forward lighter. It means more than you know. The end, Mug.